The alarm shrieked through the corridors of Research Station Kepler 438, its piercing wail cutting through the artificial atmosphere like a blade. Alyssa's scaled hands flew across the holographic interface, her reptilian eyes widening as the radiation sensors painted the displays in angry crimson. Reactor breach. Core meltdown in progress. The automated voice was calm, clinical, a stark contrast to the terror flooding through Alyssa's veins. She was Thessarian, a species known across the galaxy for their methodical nature and scientific prowess. They did not panic. They calculated. They planned. But this was different. "Evan!" Alyssa's voice cracked as she spun toward the habitation wing. Her human ward, no, her cub, as she'd come to think of him, was in the recreation area with the other younglings. 5 years old, with curious brown eyes and an insatiable appetite for questions. The Thessarian concept of guardianship was sacred. When Alyssa had accepted the role of caring for the human child during this 3-year research posting, she had sworn the oath of scales, to protect with breath, with blood, with life itself. She'd thought it ceremonial. Now, as radiation warnings blazed across every screen, she understood it was prophecy. Alyssa's clawed feet pounded against the metal floors. The station groaned around her, a dying beast exhaling its last toxic breaths. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see the other researchers fleeing toward the escape pods. Standard protocol. Abandon station. Preserve the many over the few. But the youngling's wing was on the opposite side of the reactor. No time to reach the pods. She burst into the recreation area. 3 Thessarian hatchlings huddled near the wall, their small scales pale with fear. And Evan, sweet, fragile Evan, stood frozen, clutching a toy starship. "Alyssa?" His voice was so small. "Come, little ones. Quickly now." She kept her tone steady, authoritative. The hatchlings responded immediately to the adult command, scurrying toward her. Evan hesitated only a moment before running into her arms. The safe room. Every station had one, a reinforced bunker designed for precisely this catastrophe. Alyssa had reviewed its specifications during her orientation, barely paying attention. Lead-lined walls, independent life support, enough rations for... Her stomach dropped. The room was rated for Thessarians. Their biology could withstand radiation levels that would turn human cells into soup. The shielding was adequate for her species. But for a human child? She sealed the door behind them with a hiss of pressurized locks. The walls were thick, gray, sterile. Emergency lighting cast everything in pale blue. 3 days of oxygen, water recyclers, nutrient paste designed for reptilian digestive systems. "Alyssa, I'm scared." Evan's small hand found hers. She knelt, bringing her angular face level with his round one. Humans were so soft, their skin like flower petals, their bones like dried reeds. Every instinct in her said they were too fragile for this universe, every instinct but one, the oath. "I know, little cub, but you are safe here. We all are." She hoped her scent didn't betray the lie. Thessarians communicated as much through pheromones as words. The first night was manageable. She rationed the nutrient paste, mixing it with water to make it palatable for Evan. The hatchlings curled together in sleep, their metabolism slowing to conserve energy. Evan lay against Alyssa's side, his body heat, so much warmer than hers, radiating through her scales. By the second day, the radiation meters on her wrist device told a grim story. The levels outside the safe room were lethal. Even with the shielding, elevated readings seeped through. Not enough to harm her or the hatchlings immediately, but Evan. She watched him sleep, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Humans were paradoxes, simultaneously the most fragile and most resilient species she'd encountered. They broke easily, but refused to stay broken. They died from 1,000 things that wouldn't faze a Thessarian, yet they somehow conquered death valleys and frozen tundras on their homeworld. Alyssa made a decision. She positioned herself between Evan and the wall closest to the reactor. Her body was larger, denser. Every gram of her mass would absorb radiation that might otherwise reach him. The hatchlings she arranged on the opposite side, furthest from the source. "Alyssa, why aren't you sleeping?" Evan asked on the third morning. "I am resting, little one. Thessarians rest differently than humans." Another lie. She hadn't slept since they'd sealed the door. She couldn't afford to. Every hour she shifted position, calculating angles, using her body as a living shield. Her scales began to dull. Her claws ached. The radiation monitor on her wrist climbed steadily, still within survivable limits for her species. But the cumulative exposure. She'd done the math. By the time rescue came, if rescue came, she would require extensive medical treatment, cellular regeneration, possible scale grafting. Worth it. On the fourth day, the door's external sensors detected movement. Alyssa's hand went to the emergency release, but she hesitated. What if it was structural collapse? What if opening the door now would flood them with, "Survivors inside? This is Rescue Team Theta. Radiation levels have dropped to Class 3. Respond if you can hear this." Alyssa's hand slammed the release. The door opened to reveal a Vorquin rescue worker in full hazard gear, their 4 eyes widening behind the transparent visor. "By the void. There are younglings in here. And a human?" "They are all well," Alyssa said, her voice steady despite the weakness in her legs. "The cubs are well." Evan ran forward, then stopped, looking back at her. "Alyssa? Aren't you coming?" She swayed, catching herself against the doorframe. "Of course, little one. I simply need a moment." The rescue team leader scanned her with a medical tricorder. Their expression behind the visor shifted from shock to something like awe. "Your radiation exposure. You've absorbed nearly 4 times the safe limit. You positioned yourself as a biological shield." "The oath of scales," Alyssa murmured, her vision blurring. "To protect with breath, with blood, with life itself." "The human child shows minimal exposure. The hatchlings even less. You—" The rescue worker's voice carried a reverence Alyssa had never heard before. "You saved them all." Evan's small hand gripped hers. "You said we were safe. You promised." Alyssa managed a smile, her nictitating membranes sliding across her eyes. "And I never break a promise." 3 months later, Alyssa stood on the observation deck of Medical Station Aurora, her scales freshly regenerated and gleaming. The treatment had been extensive, but Thessarian biology was resilient. Evan pressed his face against the viewport beside her, watching ships come and go. "When can we go back to research?" "Soon, little cub." "Will you teach me Thessarian?" he asked suddenly. "The oath of scales? I want to learn it." Alyssa's heart, that twin-chambered organ that had pumped radiation-poisoned blood through her body for 4 days, swelled with something she didn't have a word for in either Thessarian or Standard. "It is not taught, Evan. It is sworn only by guardians." He looked up at her with those impossibly expressive human eyes. "Then I want to swear it someday. For someone else. Like you did for me." And Alyssa understood then what the rest of the galaxy was slowly learning. Humans didn't need scales or claws or radiation-resistant biology. They had something far more dangerous. They had the capacity to inspire others to be better than they ever thought possible. "Then I will teach you," she said softly, "when you are ready." Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside, between a Thessarian researcher and a human child, something warmer than any sun blazed into being, a bond that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come, to protect with breath, with blood, with life itself. Some oaths, Alyssa realized, transcended species. Some oaths were simply human.